Welcome to Passport to Wealth, the podcast for U.S. expats ready to take charge of their finances while living abroad. I'm your host, Arielle Tucker, a certified financial planner, enrolled agent, and fellow expat, here to help you navigate the complexities of cross-border life with clarity and confidence. Welcome back to Passport to Wealth. My name is Arielle Tucker, and I'm your host. Today, I am joined with Angela Vitiello, founder and owner of the Expat Parenting Collective. Angela has been living abroad since 2010 and has called 4 countries across 3 continents home, all while traveling to nearly 40 others. Since becoming an expat parent in 2018, she's dedicated her work to helping families navigate the unique challenges of raising children and building partnerships abroad. And oh my gosh, I relate so much to this because I am raising my children abroad, navigating all this. So I'm so excited to kind of come across your work. You know, you're very passionate about experiential learning, leadership development, intercultural communication, understanding human transitions. Angela has spent the past 6 years researching the complexities of expat family life and relationships. She's an alumna of INSEAD Business School, a member of the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, and an affiliate of the Institute of Coaching at McLean Harvard Medical School. Angela now lives in Brussels with her husband and their 2 third culture kids, where she continues her mission to support globally mobile families thriving through change. Coach, researcher, and expat parenting expert, Angela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you've lived in 4 countries across 3 continents. I mean, that's so impressive. You've traveled to nearly 40. So can you kind of share what originally inspired your expat journey?
What's so interesting is that I don't think that I had an expat journey in mind. I was working as a high school history teacher and an adjunct at a local university when in 2010, due to the economic downturn, I lost my job. And at that point, I was 30 years old, and I said to myself, okay, I can work at 4 different universities as an adjunct and Starbucks for health insurance back in 2010, or I can choose another route. I can do something else. And that's what I chose. I did my research, and I ended up going to South Korea. And I spent 3.5 years there before then moving to Europe.
Wow. Okay. And, you know, I see that that trend so much, like the accidental expat. You just start looking around and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to work at 4 U.S. universities and potentially Starbucks as well to cobble together a life that actually can support me, which is crazy. What was the turning point, though? So you go to South Korea, you're teaching there. How did you actually create the Expat Parenting Collective?
Yeah, that didn't happen until a lot later. I left South Korea in 2014 and moved to Amsterdam. Single, was not married at the time, didn't have any kids. And it wasn't until 2018 when my daughter was born and we moved to Brussels when I was 5 months pregnant. So the Expat Parenting Collective, the idea was kind of a seed that was planted in the move from the Netherlands to Belgium. And pretty much from that point onward, every single piece of information, experience, feeling, sensation really was putting forth into what was going to come later at the Expat Parenting Collective. And I think, so it was born roughly 2 years ago, but since 2018, every experience, whether it be an identity shift, whether it be some kind of transition that the children were going through, struggle, whatever it may be, the maternal grief, everything, it all kind of came together as like a beautiful snowball running down a hill 2 years ago. 2023, business was born.
Okay. Can you walk us back? So you, I'm assuming, moved to South Korea and you had like a visa to work as a teacher?
Yeah, it was a teacher at first, then a university professor.
Okay. And then when you moved to Amsterdam, what was the visa or what was your access point to get into Europe?
It's a great question. At that point in time, I was not a European citizen. I entered into the Netherlands purely because they have a visa that's available for Americans, and if I'm not mistaken, also Japanese, which is called the Friendship Agreement. Mm-hmm. Start a small business there with a minimal deposit in your bank account. Back in 2014, that was 4,500 euros. I don't know if it's the same now or even if it still exists as an opportunity. I said that due to governmental and political changes. But yeah, so I started a business. It was an educational consulting firm in which I used my background in business and education to help to make others, Dutch people, foreigners living in the Netherlands, better communicators.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you actually decided to move for this friendship visa. Had you explored other European countries, or did you just kind of figure out this friendship visa exists? I'm going to go with that one.
I'd explored a few opportunities in different countries, but I didn't explore all the visa possibilities in many different countries. And I knew a few people from the Netherlands, and I knew that their way of communicating and their way of living is very similar to New Yorkers. So
I've heard that before.
So it's mainly the Randstad, which is from Amsterdam to Rotterdam, in which they are a bit more direct, they're upfront. There's a lot of low context in the way we communicate. And so it's much easier to do business from, for example, a New Yorker to a person from that region. If it were to be someone from Texas or Arkansas or somewhere else, maybe it'd be a bit different. But New Yorkers, it's quite easy to make that jump. And since I knew so many Dutch people, there was a bit of trust that was there. And it was just an entry point. And so I kind of took advantage of that opportunity and just jumped on it.
Okay. And then you moved to Belgium. So how did you make that transition?
So I met my husband a couple months after I moved to the Netherlands. We got married in 2017. A couple months after our marriage, we found out we were expecting. And at the same time, my husband found out that there was an enlightenment. He was like, I don't want to stay at my job. So he actually started applying for opportunities. And it was an opportunity that moved us from the Netherlands to Belgium, to Brussels specifically.
Okay. And so then that basically was like a family reunification visa that you went on.
Yeah.
Okay. I always think that's like an interesting thing to kind of track is like, what are the visa opportunities? And that friendship visa does still exist. I don't know off the top of my head what the current amount that you have to have in your bank account is, but we'll just share that with our audience. We had another guest on from GTFO, and they're based in the Netherlands, and they mentioned that same visa. So transitioning over to kind of like the challenges of expat parenting and family life, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that you experience or the parents that you support face when raising children abroad?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think many of us don't realize all that goes into raising a family abroad. So the first thing would be not recognizing the sensations and feelings in our bodies, which can lead to parental burnout. We do not have a family system. Aside from the family unit that we are taking into another country, we don't have any family support. We don't have that community or that comfort zone. So it makes things more difficult, puts more pressure on us. And we need to be aware of when we're reaching our max. And that could just be, I'm really tired today, and asking your partner for help. Or this is a stressful week. We need to get some support from somewhere else. Otherwise, that can lead to burnout very quickly. The second biggest challenge would be identity. Our identity shifts when we have children. Our identity shifts at other points in our life, which could be adolescence, which could be menopause. But identity shifts when you move countries as well. It also kind of shifts a bit when you speak different languages. So there are many different points in which you could feel that you're not yourself. And so this needs to be questioned and needs to be explored. And if you're like me and you moved and had a baby at the same time, not only do you have maternescence or paternescence, male or female, but you also have the identity shift in moving to a new country and having that new lens in which you see the world. So that would be the second, building your life abroad, making your home a home. And the last thing is parenting and partnering across cultures. I don't think we realize that people from the same culture don't parent in the same way. So if you are marrying or in a relationship with someone from a different culture, or you're living in a different culture than the two partners are from, this complicates things and makes things a bit more challenging. And so it's important to actually understand how you parent together, how you are supporting your relationship, because there's a lot more strain on the relationship due to the fact that you don't have that extra supportive family nearby. And everything else that goes into that, it really, really comes down to communication.
I relate to everything you're saying just because I'm also a parent and I'm also raising my children abroad. I mean, my husband's American, and culturally, I would say we probably grew up very similarly, but all the things you're saying, I know that so many families will relate, and this will all resonate with them so much. You have spent just years researching expat family and partnership challenges. What are you've talked a little bit about some of the patterns that have stood out the most. what are some tips or strategies that you kind of can give parents, equip them with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first thing I would say is that communication is key. And how can you start to facilitate that? It's really important to clarify your values, your boundaries, and your fears. So your values are going to change throughout your life, and your values are important. You can have personal values, you can have values as a couple, you can have values as a family unit, but it's important to know how, who, what we are and what we stand for. Boundaries are also important because they allow us to understand what it is that we're willing to deal with and what we don't want to have in our lives. I can give you an example of a boundary my husband set when he was looking for jobs during that time where we chose Belgium. He said, I don't want to move to another country where I need to learn another language, And that can be a boundary that can work for you and your family, or maybe not. There may be others as well, too. So the last thing would be fears. And I think that this is the one that most people really, really, really struggle with because it's very difficult to admit what one's fears are. You feel very vulnerable. But being authentic and vulnerable in this way allows a couple and a family unit to get closer. And that's where that authenticity and that's where that intimacy and that closeness is really, really key. And I can share a fear that I had when I was expecting our first. I said to my husband, I'm afraid that once our baby's born, that if I'm struggling, I'm not going to be able to vocalize that. And also being unable to vocalize it in a country where at that point in time, I didn't speak the language, I knew very few people. It's not like I could even reach out to a friend. So being able to admit that, was able to show my husband how he could further support me.
Was your husband Belgium? Is
he Belgium? No.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah. So it really comes down to building that compass, which will help to redirect you when things get difficult, or when maybe there's a choice that comes up and it's not so difficult per se, but maybe half the family wants to go one way, half the family wants to go another. It really is like a compass that can help to direct you and helping you in many of the decisions. That would be the biggest tip that I would give, because having that opportunity, that space is really key. And that communication is really the most important. And the thing I would add on to that was that these things are always going to be changing. So set a time every quarter to go over these things again and see if something has shifted for you. And if your kids are old enough, you can even do it with them as well.
Oh, I love that. I love family meetings. I love when we're kind of all having really open discussion about these things, because, children also have to learn how to navigate these. We're going to talk a little bit about third culture kids, but they're also going to be having to think about, where do I want to live and what are my boundaries and what am I trying to build for myself at some point? And so equipping them with these types of tools, these conversations is so important. And I would say even more important when, they're going to have to figure it out. I love that you shared your fear back from 2018 when you were expecting your first child. Thank you for sharing that, because that resonates so much with conversations that I've had with so many clients and friends, right? A lot of people move abroad for one partner's career. All of a sudden that partner is working all the time. Maybe they're traveling as well all the time. And you're kind of left at home to maybe have children and make friends and keep yourself busy, all in a different language. And so I hear that fear all the time. And I think not every partner is prepared for the emotional weight that comes with that, where it's right now, I can only rely on you. I don't have family. I don't have friends. I don't have my community. I only have you. And I think that can be a really difficult shift in a relationship, depending on again, what backgrounds are and what expectations are coming into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that many of us don't realize that when you move overseas, that things do get more challenging for the couple as well, because you are relying solely upon each other, at least at first, and so you need to be aware that you need to build that support system among each other. And that really depends on communication and allowing that space. And a tip that I give couples that are taking the leap to go overseas is to schedule a time every week, a check-in time. It could be, what, I'm really struggling with how you dealt with the kids this week. What's going on? Are you exhausted? Something going on at work? You didn't share it with me. Please help me understand why it is you're so short with the children. Or it could be, I'm feeling disconnected and I think we need to have a date. We haven't had a couples night in a long time. How do we do this? Or I feel like I need to go back home because my mom is sick. That space in your calendar, in your agenda, whether it be Google Calendar, Outlook, whatever it may be, every week at the same time. And you know what? Is it always going to happen? No, but at least it's there. It pops up on your phone or whatever device you may have. And you see, okay, this is the time where I have my check-in with my partner. And to be able to like really kind of help, because if you don't allow for that space to just have the conversations often don't happen. There's so much going on. So that would be a tip that I would give to help support couples, because then you really are able to express what it is you really truly need.
Yeah, I think that is so important. I want to switch over to kind of third culture kids. So you are a parent to two third culture kids, and your situation is even more extreme than mine because you're living in Belgium, you're married to an Italian, and you're American, right? And so we have so many different cultures at play in your home. How do you kind of help them balance, the environment that they're growing up in, while really kind of maintaining that strong sense of their U.S. and Italian identity as well?
Yeah. I don't think we really force it or make it a big thing. However, we do have rituals and traditions that are in place, whether they be, what holidays to celebrate, or how we read to them before bed in our native languages, how we speak to them in our native languages only, maybe sometimes in French as well, or read to them in French as well, because of course, naturally, they also have French materials nearby. It's really about consistency. And when it comes to third culture kids, setting up the opportunity for open communication, because often with third culture kids, it really has nothing to do with the child and lets you move when they're much older, and you have a lot more of a possibility for discussion. But in regards to third culture kids, the most important thing is the partnership, because if that's solid, then everything else will kind of fall into place. If you're living in another culture and the kid has a question about how someone did something at school and maybe they're ashamed that the way it was presented to them, they need to be able to come back home and talk to you about that. So it's really, when it comes to third culture kids, it's all about the stability and the concrete foundation that exists at home, open communication, the possibility to discuss anything. That is really the number one. And so that's something that we practice at home. I would say the most important thing we practice at home. Everything else, the routines, the prioritization of different customs and traditions, that's really secondary.
One thing that I've noticed as my children get older is they have this idea of the U.S., which it's almost like they think the U.S. is just like in the movies. And they kind of long for this idea of the U.S. from the movies. And we're like, okay, it's very different. And I obviously, we travel back and they kind of get the best of everything about America when we travel. And I don't know if you've had conversations with your clients or your own children about this kind of break in reality and how you would suggest parents deal with that or navigate that.
Yeah, I think the issue that comes up a bit more these days is, and this is not just the US, it's all around the world, it's trying to navigate one's perception of one's nationality. And all things, I always push the question back to the couple, the partner, the parents, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about, in your example of your question, the difference between the reality and the perception that the child sees? Or the life that they envision on vacation versus the life that they envision when they are back home, which is where you currently live. So yeah, it's a complicated question, and I think it depends on every family, because every family has different values, different things as to what they expect or want life to truly be.
Yeah, though I imagine with your advice, just like mine, it's so individualized, right? Every situation is so different. So, I mean, how do you and the Expat Parenting Collective, how do you support families in practice? What kind of tools or resources do you generally provide families with?
Yeah, so we have 4 main services, which one-on-one coaching, group coaching, a group container that lasts 3 months, and rough work. And through 3 out of 4 of these, we do everything from experiential learning, system psychodynamic coaching, a little bit of mindfulness, breath work, somatic tools, but also practical tools like identifying things like who's the primary parent and who's the secondary parent, or do both co-parent? Or is someone have a primary career? Does someone have a secondary career? Or are you both primary career holders? And how do you divide the load with all of those things? So it really runs the gamut, but they're all important because, as I said before, the biggest challenges, parental burnouts, identity, building your life abroad, and parenting a partner against cross cultures. It's really necessary for us to dig deep within ourselves and gain that self-awareness. It has to come from the experiential learning, the system psychodynamics coaching. And also just learning. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to take that pause and not react.
Do you find that you are coaching and working with families that are already kind of like in crisis or aware there's an issue, or people coming to you before they're moving and they're thinking, how do I navigate this move or prepare for this move as our family becomes expats?
Yeah, it really runs the gamut. I have people who have already moved abroad but don't have children and want to prepare for having kids. I have people who are about to move, who want to prepare for that. And then I have also people who are really in the thick of some serious issues on the border of separation or divorce and go through couples coaching with me to be able to kind of rebuild that foundation from the ground up in order to be their best selves and best couple possible.
Okay. Oh, thank you. You guys do so much. We'll be sure to link your website and your links to the notes of this episode if you're listening. Okay. Final question. What advice would you give to parents who are about to move abroad for the first time, especially those with young children?
So first, patience. It's really, really important not to pack your schedules and your days with things. It's important to create space and to really just kind of be as present as possible. That would be really the first tip, because if you're entering a new society, a new culture, you need to give yourself that space to deal with whatever is going to come up. And the second is, and this has to do with your children, your partner, the new culture you live in, everything, curiosity is the bridge to understanding. So important. If we show up with curiosity, then people see that we want to know. People see that we want to learn. We want to understand. And so in all of that, it's really, really, really a great tool to allow people to meet you halfway, whether it be your partner, whether it be your kid in the middle of tantrum, crisis, whatever, or someone you meet on the street and you're fumbling with words trying to figure out how to express this.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
The content shared in this podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial, tax, or legal advice. We encourage you to consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, or other licensed expert before making any decisions based on the topics discussed. Everyone's financial situation is unique, and personalized guidance from a trusted professional is the best way to ensure your choices align with your individual goals and circumstances.